3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Welcome to Roots of Reality. My name is Ben Baumann, and today I'm going to be talking about the history of vaccines. So, in a world where a global pandemic continues to be a big part of our lives, with vaccines now out for some around the world at least, I think it is important to provide some clarity regarding vaccines and their history in human society. So to do this, we first have to look at the very first vaccine in human history, which was created in 1796 by the English Dr. Edward Jenner for the smallpox virus, which was first described in ancient Egypt about 3,000 years ago, and since 1796, vaccines have been used to fight diseases caused by many different types of viruses and bacteria. So vaccines are really nothing new to our species. In fact, it's something that we have become very accustomed to. It's a technology that we are very familiar with and have gotten pretty good at creating. And this then brings us to our next question, and that is, what is a vaccine and how are they created? Obviously, when you think about it, the idea that you can create something in a laboratory to prevent a disease is really pretty incredible. You know, it's almost like something you would read in a science fiction book when you learn the intricacies of the process and how complex it is to create something. But despite this complex process, it's a process that we've become very good at. And this is how it works. You see, a vaccine contains a weakened or an inactive form of a particular virus or bacteria, which will produce an immune system response in the body. Thus, when given the vaccine, your body is given the ability to develop immunity to the virus or bacteria without getting the disease. You could still get side effects from the vaccination, but really this is just your body developing immunity. So it's nothing really to worry about. And so, since 1796, vaccines have been one of human society's greatest tools to fight diseases around the world, saving many lives every year. Perhaps the best way of describing this even is to think about historically how important vaccines are to human society and just how much the amount of deaths caused by different diseases have changed before and after vaccines were created. For example, for thousands of years, a virus called smallpox has terrorized human societies all over the planet and killed millions and millions of people. At one point, it was even killing millions every year. However, today the virus has been eliminated from the world thanks to a vaccine. Another example comes from a disease caused by bacteria called tetanus, which has been around also for thousands of years. But thanks to vaccination efforts, there has been an 89% decrease in the number of cases of tetanus since 1990. And this just continues to occur with several other diseases like tuberculosis, which has decreased by 50% since 1990, or polio, which in the 1950s, almost 2,000 deaths a year occurred due to polio in the United States alone, but in the 1960s dropped to below 100 thanks to vaccinations. Also, in the U.S., millions of cases of flu and thousands of deaths were prevented from 2017 to 2018 just because 40% of people in the United States got the flu shot. So if more people got it, even more lives would be saved. Unfortunately, though, despite the increase in vaccination efforts in modern society, we're reaching a point where our faith in the scientific system that has been at play and has been a normal part of our lives for over 200 years is now starting to get doubted more and more. Take measles, for example. A very old virus. In fact, my ancestor who fought in the Civil War in the 1800s died of the measles, just to give you perspective historically. You see, from 2000 to 2018, there was a 73% decline in deaths worldwide when it came to measles. However, due to a lack of vaccinations in recent years, from 2016 to 2019, deaths from measles increased by 50% worldwide. Now think about that for a second. A disease that we can prevent is killing people at a higher rate in the modern world in recent years than it did just a few years ago in the past. And that fact alone should be considered ultimately an embarrassing education failure for human society. Because we should be better than this. How are we letting a disease that was able to kill, my ancestor going back over 100 years in the Civil War still kill people today when we have a cure for it? We got to do better than that. And so now turning towards the big vaccination topic today, we have the COVID-19 vaccines. You see, right now we're living in a pandemic in a world where over 3 million and counting have died due to this virus, COVID-19. However, human society has developed some major weapons to fight back. The first vaccine that came out was the Russian vaccine called Sputnik V in 2020, which though was met with skepticism by the international community, based on international tests is considered to be very effective. Then later, in 2020, the United States produced very effective vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna, and the British also produced an effective vaccine called Oxford AstraZeneca. Then in 2021, another vaccine called Johnson & Johnson came out, and there will also likely be another American vaccine coming out soon called Novavax. Now, China also has a vaccine, Convidecia. However, it is not considered to be nearly as effective as the other vaccines, which was even recently admitted by the Chinese official leading the fight against the pandemic in China, who said they are working on boosting its effectiveness. However, several places have now created vaccines, and we're able to fight this virus and really try to make this pandemic go away. Now, obviously, because this pandemic has engulfed our lives so much, and now all we're doing is thinking about, what's going on? When is this pandemic going to finally be over? Everyone's tired of dealing with it. Regardless of what political side of the aisle you're on. It's understandable. It's something that none of us were prepared for. We couldn't imagine our lives being affected in this way. And now there's these kind of strange conversations where people are talking about like, oh, what vaccine did you get? Now, who would have thought that what vaccine you would get would be a conversation starter just a couple years ago? But alas, this is the world we're in. So now I will try to go through some of the latest vaccine concerns people have and shed a little bit of clarity on the situation. It's a scary time still around the world, and if you're afraid of vaccines, that's okay. Obviously, this is something that you probably never really thought about before, but now in this world where we're constantly talking about them, people start to think a little bit more about them, and maybe are a little bit more nervous now because there's a lot of things floating around on the internet, and it's just a kind of a scary time to be alive. So just starting off, blood clot concerns regarding the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So just to put this in perspective, because I think really this is a question of just statistical probability. When it comes to Oxford AstraZeneca, there's been about 168 blood clots reported in the United Kingdom out of about 21 million vaccinations given, which means there is a 0.0008% chance of a person getting a blood clot after the vaccine, and that's 8 out of a million. So the chances that you're going to get one are pretty small. And as for Johnson & Johnson, similar situation, there were 6 cases of reported blood clots out of about 7 million, which means there is a 0.00000009% chance of getting a blood clot when rounded, which is 1 out of about 1 million people. So, just in case that doesn't ease your concerns regarding the possibility of blood clots with those 2 different vaccines, to take this a step further, here are some things that you are statistically more likely to have happen to you in your life than get a blood clot from one of these vaccines. First off, die in a car accident, which is, by the way, way more likely to happen than you getting a blood clot. Additionally, if you're into bowling, you're more likely to bowl a perfect game, which, if you're like me, that will almost certainly never happen to you. Also, you're more likely to be born with 11 fingers. So those are just 3 examples of things that are really just showing that this is something that we probably shouldn't be too concerned about. The chances that you're going to have a problem are pretty small. In fact, it is still not even determined to what extent these blood clots are connected to the vaccines versus other factors. So long story short, if you have concerns about blood clots, please speak with your doctor, but the vast majority of people should have absolutely no problem at all. Second, another common concern is why vaccines in the US were given emergency use authorization instead of FDA approval. And this is a common misunderstanding because the difference is really circumstantial in many ways. Emergency authorization means the FDA decided that a vaccine is so important that it will put special focus on vaccine creation efforts by allowing the testing and production of vaccines to happen at the same time instead of doing them one at a time, which traditionally happens in the normal FDA approval process. That way, if a vaccine passes testing, it can get approved and be ready for distribution to the general public as soon as possible because it's already in production in case it is deemed safe and effective. And this is much more efficient when you're dealing with a pandemic and an emergency situation because you don't have to have this delay. And this doesn't mean the vaccine is not being held to the same strict standards as other vaccines created for other diseases in the past. It just means there's more focus on these particular vaccines to make sure that once proven safe, the vaccines are given to people as soon as possible because, after all, lives are on the line. And so these 2 examples I gave with blood clots and sort of the differences between FDA approval and emergency authorization are, fairly understandable concerns to have. Unfortunately, though, the other concerns regarding the vaccines are much more bizarre when you think about it and really kind of fall in the realm of pseudo-scientific conspiracy theories. For example, the vaccine is not part of some comic book villain-like plot by Bill Gates to decrease the world population or to track you with microchip. The vaccine also does not cause infertility nor change your DNA, and it does not contain fetal tissue. So, with that in mind, we have to remember that we really shouldn't limit what we think human society is capable of doing. We are talking about modern science right now, and a process of creating vaccinations that has had over 200 years to improve and get better and better. And if you think about it, when a big societal problem like a pandemic happens, and people are scared, and we have all these scientists around the world that are doing what they are trained to do, and that is to stop people from dying. There is an incredible amount of effort that goes into solving the problem. Our ability as a human society to develop a vaccine within a year of the pandemic is not some type of science fiction-like event. It's not a myth. It's not a conspiracy theory. Rather, it just speaks to how technology continues to improve in our society. Because when we as a species are determined to create something, we can do incredible things. Just think about all the things that have been invented in the past 50 years. It's incredible. So why think that we can't create better vaccines than ever before? In fact, if we were not creating better vaccines than ever before, we wouldn't be improving as a society. And all we've been doing for the past 50 years is improving our technology and making it better and better and better. So after all, when millions of people are dying around the world, why wouldn't we create a vaccine as fast as possible and get vaccinated? As always, billions of years led to you, so make the most of it.